So this milquetoast center-right pseudo-intellectual James Lindsay has been recently having a multi-month crash out over what he's calling the woke right. And I mean, James Lindsay as a public figure, like his role is to serve as containment and a pipeline back into sort of naive classical liberalism that still believes the American system can work out somehow. At its core, he's basically just a neoconservative who is more willing to acknowledge than others the nastiness of the left's moral, racial, and sexual politics. But Lindsay believes very firmly that if you entertain anything more than the most lukewarm, superficial, and tepid criticisms of the left, that you've gone too far and you are now part of the woke right. You're now just as bad as the left is. So without further ado, let's dive right in and see what Mr. Lindsay has to say.
And James, you mentioned the term woke right. It's a term you and I have both used, but it'd be interesting to talk about it for a number of reasons. But first of all, what do you mean by that term? Because a lot of people are very confused about it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the best term. It's more accurate to I don't use the word woke too. I use it a little too casually still.
America is actually undergoing a massive paradigm shift culturally, politically, religiously. This is why woke even caught on as a descriptive term. Woke is tricky to define because it's a pejorative for the left in its current phase, with all its particular unique hypocrisies and contradictions of the present day. Not of 20 years ago necessarily, not of 30 years ago necessarily, not of 50 years ago necessarily. The other reason is that woke people do not necessarily see themselves as woke or refer to themselves as woke, and there isn't like a single unifying underlying theoretical framework for what they all believe, or at least not one that they all consciously agree on. And James Lindsay is attempting to glom onto this buzzword, this hot topic known as woke, in order to sort of muddy the waters of the conversation. It's like, yeah, James, wokeness could be interpreted as a species of Marxism, but just by virtue of how thoroughly ingrained it is into our society, doesn't that kind of imply that some of the democratic norms, values, and assumptions we held were wrong? Like, if we allowed it to get this bad? James Lindsay's answer would be no, and how dare you even ask that question, you woke right bigot.
Generally speaking, but I've tried to be very specific when it comes to it, to use the phrase woke Marxism, as in that it's a species of Marxist thought, yada, yada, yada. So we can very easily place that on the Marxist left, right? Well, woke right, another term that might work for that is woke fascism. And just like woke Marxism is technically woke neo-Marxism, this could be called woke neo-fascism. The more syllables...
Why is it woke?
Well, that's what I wanted to get to. So there are kind of two ways to look at why it's woke. And one is kind of philosophical and one is practical. The practical side is look at how they behave. They behave exactly like the woke.
Whoever this woke right is, they do not advocate for mutilating children. So I would say there are probably other significant differences between how they behave and how the woke behave.
There's the targeted influence campaigns. There's the manufacturing of what the postmodernists called legitimation by parology or whatever. They create the illusion that there's massive support for this and massive distaste for that, using social media manipulations like we just talked about.
This is the crash out part. This is what's so rich about this. He's talking about a bunch of people getting pissed at him on Twitter. Like...
They are highly invested in identity politics. The answer for them to leftist identity politics is a reaction identity politics or reactionary identity politics, equal and opposite, or in biblical terms, answering evil with evil, which the Bible says not to do, by the way.
It's so disgusting that Lindsay would invoke the Bible to perpetuate this lie, but it's also like, what do you expect from someone who's an atheist and doesn't believe in it anyways? Going, oh, see, it's identity politics, that means it's both literally the same, is so shallow.
Very specifically. And so there's this, grievance identity everything's bad for white Christian men, straight white Christian men. We're the oppressed minority under this. There's an ideology, and this kind of bleeds into the philosophical idea, but we'll get more specific with that in a second. There's this kind of belief that there's this ruling class that's erected an ideology to marginalize people like them that sounds very much like woke, except instead of saying that it's like the white people the white ruling class created white supremacy to marginalize people of color, especially black and indigenous, and their ways of knowing from getting inside, the woke right or the woke fascist side says instead that following World War II, on the back of Hitler and the idea of never again, there was erected a post-war liberal consensus. Starting in the 1940s, immediately, starting in 1945, the creation of the United Nations was part of this. The signing on to the United Nations was part of this. They assigned Bill Buckley, to having done a route to drive the true conservatives to the margins so that a false post-war liberal consensus conservative movement could rise up, the neocons, and hold them out. So the neocons become this kind of hegemonic force within the conservative faction that edges out so-called true conservatism.
It's so weird to see James Lindsay pretend like neoconservatism didn't become the dominant ideology of the American ruling class, and like the old right was never a thing. Like he's just gonna like swap it out, you know? He's gonna in the next second he's gonna say, oh well, they think that these people just oppose keeping out ideas like fascism. Like, no, that's a straw man, Lindsay.
And these more dangerous, so to speak, ideas like fascist ideas, like Carl Schmitt's ideas about unbound executives and friend-enemy politics and so on, that these ideas all had to be pushed to the side on the pretext that World War II or a Adolf Hitler can never rise again. And so therefore, the true conservatives who represented conservative politics and kept at bay the beast of the left, which they say is that the right's true function is to keep at bay the left. In other words, to have a war, right versus left, with everybody in the middle, I guess, taking fire in the crossfire. But they believe that this post-war liberal consensus and the neoconservative movement literally was designed to marginalize their perspectives and to keep these other more radical right-wing ideas out of play.
This is what's so annoying about Lindsay too, is because like whether or not you want to quibble over it was intentionally designed this way with that particular goal in mind, functionally that just is what happened. Like whether it was purposeful or not, conservatism was redefined, certain conservative positions changed, certain ideas that had been part of conservative thought exited the realm of permissibility or became fringe and marginalized.
So this is a very woke way of thinking about the world, that there was a structural construction of the social and political and cultural environment designed to exclude people like them in order to be able to achieve certain political agendas. And now they believe that they've woken up to these ideas. Woke. Mm-hmm. They've found them again. They've read the forbidden philosophers, Carl Schmitt, Julius Evola, James Burnham, and so on. They've read these things, and they're bringing back a true conservatism that was excluded from politics roughly since the end of World War II on the bogus pretense of preventing the rise of another fascist like Hitler or Franco or Pinochet.
The term woke really originated with the 5% Nation in and around the 1960s, and it was a term for the collective racial and social consciousness of Black Americans, which obviously differed from mainstream narratives. The way James Lindsay is redefining woke here is so lazy and broad. Like, by this definition, any group of people who claims that any set of ideas were hidden or marginalized and to have found the truth or seen through the lies of the mainstream narrative would count as woke. Like, any group of people about any set of teachings in any context.
And so there's a very practical explanation for why they're woke, but especially their behavior. Lots of lying, lots of character attacks, lots of saying no enemies to the right, but they don't actually even attack the left that's their enemy, so to speak, at all. They only attack other conservatives. Lots of power plays, lots of manipulative, speech.
Again, this is why the crash out is so funny. He's lost his mind because he got a little smoke on Twitter from the right. He's like, I can't believe this. I can't understand it. It must be some sort of conspiracy.
And then there's the philosophical, deeper aspect. Why woke? What does woke mean? Woke up to a structural politics that marginalizes people like me. And we need to band together in solidarity, no enemies to the right, in order to be able to create a powerful enough oppressed coalition to flip over the power structure by putting ourselves at the center and claiming power for ourselves.
I'd love to hear James Lindsay's answer to the question, wouldn't that technically also make the founding fathers woke right?
This is explicitly woke, having a critical consciousness about the way the world is organized. Tucker Carlson, for example, if you listen to Tucker, a lot of people really like Tucker. Tucker is pretty critical of America. He's not doing a Howard Zinn critical America theory. Howard Zinn being the one who wrote the People's History, so the Marxist history of the United States, propaganda. He's writing a different critical history of the United States. Well, the Constitution was, not really adequate to prevent all of this. There is a post-World War II liberal consensus or world order that we're all being made subject to. Well, look at how America was involved in all of these things. America bad, America bad, America bad. Also, the UK was pretty bad too, and America bad, America bad. There's this kind of constant critical negativity.
Here's a nice definition. Woke right is anyone on the right who doesn't agree with James Lindsay's foreign policy positions. How's that? How's that for a nice definition right there?
You see some of these characters, I mentioned Tucker Carlson, but you see some of these characters like Stephen Wolfe, who wrote the book The Case for Christian Nationalism, has put multiple times on social media, and I don't know what he said in public talks. I've only heard one of his public talks. But you see him on social media saying more than once that he has adopted critical theory, specifically for his own purposes and to his own ends. He was recently saying on social media, somebody sent it to me, so I have to, I guess, confirm this, but he was saying that, in fact, the critical theory he uses is not the perverted version of critical theory that the left has used. It's its own more correct version of critique that goes back before the left, yada, yada. And so how do you not call the attempt to awaken a critical consciousness of the power structure that you believe has delegitimized your movement? How do you not call that woke, when woke means having awoken to a critical consciousness that there's a structural force that has delegitimized people in your political positionality? It's the exact same thing, unfortunately. It's just pushing a people in place kind of driven fascism.
Okay, how is it a people in place fascism when social change has obviously occurred over the past 100 years? And also, isn't James Lindsay himself saying that the stated goal of the woke right is to put certain people back into place rather than defend somewhere where they already occupy? Like, why doesn't a term like reactionary suffice here? Why is it woke right and woke fascist? Like, what's actually fascist about them? You can tell James Lindsay doesn't know what he's talking about because no one who did would ever say people in place fascism. Fascism inherently has revolutionary characteristics.
As opposed to we're going to end all oppression by becoming the oppressor's communism.
It's very well explained, and that's kind of why I have been calling it, even though I'm not sure it is the best term, but the behavior is the same, right? It's quite obviously the same. Victimhood, cancel culture, lying about history, all of this.
Rewriting history, lying about people, digging up people's past to cancel them. It's unbelievable.
The one complaint that people have made about that I do think is valid is that they're not comparable in terms of influence and power. The woke left control for a period of time controlled what felt like everything. The woke right isn't anywhere near that level of influence at all. And frankly, I wonder whether, having talked about it as much as you and I have, we've maybe drawn too much attention to a very small fringe. Because when we went to the Trump rally, I didn't see it. I talked to a lot of people there. I listened to all the people on stage. I didn't hear in either the statements or the response to what people were saying, the type of conversation that you see online. So it seems to me like it's a tiny fringe that's being amplified by bot farms and foreign meddling and whatever. I think increasingly, I don't think of it as real, even though, as you say, there are one or two people who are very influential in American politics, who have flirted with some of these ideas.
Yeah. That's a real thing.
That's the other thing too. James Lindsay can't distance himself from MAGA because it's too mainstream now. So his job is to kind of water things down. Anyway, James Lindsay seems even more unhinged when he's actually on Twitter. Like, a lot of his tweets really do almost seem like satire, but he's apparently serious. He was getting into it with Mike Walsh and saying Mike Walsh was in danger of becoming woke right. And he was like James Lindsay was wringing his hands over Arby's, of all things, supposedly dog whistling. And look at this. James Lindsay actually had the gall to retweet this. Britta from No Soup for Knowles says, woke right is an oxymoron, but so are the people who call themselves Christians while engaging in Marxist tactics and identity politics. An oxymoron fits them quite well. Wow. Daily Wire all the way. Britta from No Soup for Knowles jumping on this woke right bandwagon. And I'm also disgusted by this. How dare James Lindsay question my faith in Christ just for disagreeing with him on certain political issues? Like, this is we can't have any more of these atheist intellectuals telling us what Christianity means. This guy should not be taken seriously. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. James Lindsay is cringe and lame. I've made my feelings known now. And Red Channels will catch you in the next one.
Mm-hmm.